Have you ever stood outside on a clear night, far from city lights, and just looked up? There's a particular kind of silence that hits you in that moment. Thousands of stars scattered across the dark, maybe a faint smear of the Milky Way. And somewhere in the middle of that vastness, you, one person, on one small planet, in one ordinary corner of one galaxy among hundreds of billions. It's the kind of moment that makes you feel very, very small. 3,000 years ago, a shepherd turned king had that same experience. No telescopes, no satellite images, just his eyes, the desert sky.
And a question that's been on the human heart ever since. He wrote it down, and we know it today as Psalm 8. Today, we're going to walk through that psalm together and discover that the question it asks isn't really about the stars at all.
The psalm's opening cry. David begins not with a question, but with an exclamation. He looks at the created world, the sky, the moon, the stars, and immediately his mind goes to their maker. The majesty isn't in the universe itself. The universe is simply the canvas. The glory belongs to the one who set it in place. There's something worth noticing here before we go further. David doesn't study creation and conclude how vast the cosmos is. He studies creation and concludes how majestic is your name. He looks at the sky and sees not emptiness, but a signature. This is the posture the whole psalm is built on. Wonder that points beyond itself. Awe that isn't content to stop at the thing being observed, but travels all the way to the one who made it. And then, almost jarringly, David shifts from the heavens to something surprisingly small, the mouths of children and infants. Even the simplest, most defenseless voices are enough to declare God's strength, enough to silence every argument against him. Glory doesn't only live in galaxies, it lives in a baby's laugh. Greatness isn't measured only in scale. That's the first surprise of Psalm 8. God's glory shows up at both ends of the spectrum, in the unimaginably vast and in the utterly small. The question that changes everything. Now, David does what any honest person does when they really look at the night sky. He asks the question. He looks at the moon and the stars, the work of God's own fingers set carefully in place. And he asks, compared to all of that, what is a human being? Why would the maker of galaxies give a single thought to us? Why would he care? This isn't false modesty. It's basic math. Stack a human life next to the age of the universe, or the distance to the nearest star, or the sheer number of galaxies scientists now estimate, and the numbers alone should crush any sense that we matter. They look at the size of the universe and conclude that human life must be insignificant, a cosmic accident, unnoticed and unimportant. It's a common conclusion in our own age, too. The bigger we discover the universe to be, the smaller we can feel. But David doesn't stop there. He asks the question honestly, and then he lets the answer surprise him. Here's the turn. Instead of confirming that humanity is insignificant, David says the opposite. God made human beings only a little lower than the heavenly beings themselves. He crowned us with glory and honor. He gave us charge over the work of his hands, the flocks, the herds, the birds, the fish, everything that moves through the paths of the seas. Think about what's being claimed here. In a universe this vast, the God who flung the stars into place looked at a small, fragile, mortal creature and handed over responsibility. Not because we earned it by our size or our strength.
This is the heart of Psalm 8, and it's worth sitting with. Our worth was never about outsizing the universe. We were never going to win that contest. Our worth comes from being deliberately made, deliberately crowned, and deliberately given purpose by the one who made everything else too. That changes how we're meant to carry ourselves, not with the anxious smallness of an afterthought, but with the quiet dignity of someone entrusted with real responsibility for the earth, for its creatures, for each other. And it changes how we look at the sky. The same vastness that could make us feel forgotten becomes instead evidence of how deliberate and how personal God's attention to us really is. If He cared enough to design galaxies with that kind of precision, then His choice to notice us was never careless.
It was intentional.
So the psalm ends exactly where it began. Same line, same words. How majestic is your name in all the earth. But it doesn't mean the same thing anymore. The first time, it's an observation about the sky. The second time, it's an observation about everything. The stars, yes, but also the strange and wonderful fact that the God of that sky bends down to notice us. That's the shape of the whole psalm. Wonder, then a hard question, then an answer bigger than the question. And I think that's a shape worth carrying into our own lives. Because most of us ask David's question at some point, maybe standing under a dark sky, maybe just lying awake at night. What am I in all of this? Does any of it matter? Psalm 8 doesn't answer that by making the universe smaller. It answers by revealing a God who is somehow big enough to have made it all and personal enough to have crowned you with glory anyway. So the next time you find yourself under a night sky, let it do both things at once. Let it humble you and let it remind you that you were never an afterthought. How majestic is His name in all the earth and over every one of us.